They called her too weak for 20 months. Made her carry supplies while the men led missions. Treated her like she didn't belong. But when Marcus was drowning and enemy forces surrounded them, Sarah Martinez became IronWolf, the Marine who would change everything with one radio call. Before watching full story, comment below from where are you watching. Also like and subscribe for more stories. Sarah Martinez had always dreamed of becoming a Marine. Ever since she was a little girl watching her older brother pack his uniform, she knew this was her calling. She trained for years before applying to the academy. She ran every morning, studied military history every night, and prepared her mind and body for the challenge ahead. But nothing could have prepared her for what she actually faced. For 20 months at the Marine Corps Training Academy, Sarah felt invisible. Not invisible in a good way, like a skilled soldier moving unseen through enemy territory. Invisible in the worst way possible, like she didn't matter, like she didn't belong, like she was just taking up space that should have gone to someone else. The instructors treated her differently from day one. While they pushed the male cadets to their limits, they handled Sarah with kid gloves. During combat training, they paired her with the weakest fighters. During strength tests, they quietly lowered the standards just for her. During leadership exercises, they gave her the safest, easiest assignments. "We don't want you getting hurt, Martinez," Sergeant Johnson would say with that patronizing smile she had come to hate. Better to be safe than sorry. But Sarah didn't want to be safe. She wanted to be challenged. She wanted to prove she could handle whatever they threw at her. Instead, she was wrapped in invisible bubble wrap, protected from the very experiences that would make her a real Marine. The other cadets weren't much better. They treated her like their little sister instead of their equal. They carried her gear without asking. They spoke to her in soft voices like she might break. They included her in conversations the way you include a child, with patience but not respect. "Don't worry about it, Sarah," they would say when she struggled with something. Not everyone is cut out for combat roles. There are plenty of desk jobs in the Marines. Every comment was like a small knife to her heart. Sarah could run a 6-minute mile. She could do more pull-ups than half the men in her unit. She could field strip a rifle in under 2 minutes. But none of that seemed to matter to anyone. She was Little Martinez to the instructors and Sweet Sarah to her fellow cadets. Never just Martinez like everyone else. Never treated like a real soldier. Sarah's roommate, Jenny, tried to be supportive in her own way. "Maybe they're right," Jenny said one night as they polished their boots. "Maybe you should consider a support role. There's no shame in it. The Marines need people in logistics too." "I didn't come here to push papers," Sarah replied quietly, scrubbing her boots harder than necessary. "I came here to be a Marine. A real Marine." "But Sarah," Jenny said gently, "look around. You're the only woman in advanced combat training. Maybe that should tell you something." Sarah looked at her roommate for a long moment. "It tells me I'm exactly where I need to be." But late at night, alone in her bunk, Sarah sometimes wondered if everyone else was right. Maybe she was fooling herself. Maybe she really didn't belong here. Maybe she should quit and find something easier, something more appropriate for someone like her. Those were the darkest moments. When the doubt crept in and made her question everything she had worked for. But every morning, Sarah got up at 4:30 a.m., 30 minutes before reveille. She ran extra miles. She did extra push-ups. She practiced her shooting until her hands were raw. If they wanted to treat her differently, she would give them a reason to notice her. She would work harder than everyone else until they had no choice but to see her as an equal. The problem was, the harder she worked, the more protective they became. "Martinez is really pushing herself," she heard Sergeant Johnson tell another instructor. "We need to keep an eye on her. Make sure she doesn't hurt herself trying to keep up." Keep up? Sarah wanted to scream. She wasn't trying to keep up, she was trying to excel. But they couldn't see past their own assumptions about what she was capable of. The breaking point came during their 20th month of training. It was winter field training, 2 weeks in the mountains with minimal supplies, practicing survival skills and combat tactics. This was what everything had been building toward. Sarah was assigned to Team Alpha with 5 other cadets, including Marcus Thompson, the biggest and most respected cadet in their class. Marcus was everything Sarah wasn't: tall, broad-shouldered, loud, and confident. From the day they arrived at the academy, everyone knew Marcus was destined for great things. On the morning they deployed, Team Alpha gathered around their map to plan their route. Marcus immediately took charge. "Okay, listen up," he said, spreading the map on the ground. "We've got 5 objectives to hit over 10 days. It's going to be tough, especially with the weather." He looked around the circle, his eyes stopping on Sarah last. Martinez, you'll stay in the center of our formation at all times. Don't touch the radio equipment. It's too important. Don't volunteer for point duty, it's too dangerous. Just focus on keeping up and staying out of trouble. Sarah felt her cheeks burn with embarrassment and anger, but she nodded silently. She had learned that arguing only made things worse. Good, Marcus continued. Johnson, you take point. Williams, you handle communications. Davis, you're on navigation. Peters, you watch R6. I'll coordinate everything. What about me? Sarah asked quietly. Marcus looked at her like he'd forgotten she was there. You? Just carry supplies and stay quiet. We can't afford any mistakes out there. For the first week, everything went according to Marcus's plan. Team Alpha completed their objectives ahead of schedule. They avoided enemy patrols. They stayed warm and dry. And Sarah did exactly what she was told. She carried supplies, stayed quiet, and tried to be invisible. But Sarah was also watching. She was listening to radio chatter from other teams. She was studying the patrol patterns of the instructors playing enemy forces. She was memorizing terrain features and weather patterns. While everyone else focused on their specific jobs, Sarah was learning everything. On day 8, disaster struck. They were crossing a frozen stream when the ice gave way under Marcus's feet. The water was deeper than expected, and the current was strong. Marcus went under, weighed down by his heavy pack and winter gear. Man down, Johnson shouted. Marcus is in the water. The other team members panicked. Williams fumbled with the radio, trying to call for help. Davis stood frozen, staring at the spot where Marcus had disappeared. Peters started stripping off his gear to go in after him. But Sarah was already moving. She had been a lifeguard in high school and had trained for water rescues. She knew they had maybe 2 minutes before hypothermia made rescue impossible. Sarah dove into the icy water without hesitation. The cold hit her like a physical blow, knocking the air from her lungs. Her winter uniform became instantly heavy, dragging her down. But she fought through the shock and swam toward where she had seen Marcus go under. The water was murky and fast-moving. Sarah had to dive 3 times before she found him, unconscious and sinking toward the bottom. She grabbed his gear and hauled him to the surface, using every technique she had learned. Getting him to shore took everything she had. Marcus was twice her size and dead weight. The current kept trying to pull them both downstream. But Sarah refused to let go. She used the current to help her, angling toward a shallow spot where she could get footing. When she finally dragged Marcus onto dry land, he wasn't breathing. Sarah immediately began CPR, pushing hard on his chest and breathing for him. The other team members stood around uselessly, shocked by what they were witnessing. Come on, Marcus, Sarah whispered between compressions. Don't you dare die on me. After what felt like forever, Marcus coughed up stream water and started breathing again. His lips were blue and he was shivering violently, but he was alive. Sarah? He whispered, looking at her with confusion. You saved me. We need to get you warm immediately, Sarah said, already stripping off her own dry clothes to give to him. Hypothermia is the real danger now. She took complete control of the situation. She built a fire using techniques she had learned but never been allowed to practice. She set up their emergency shelter. She treated Marcus for hypothermia and shock. The other team members watched in amazement as the girl they had been protecting all year suddenly became their leader. How did you know how to do all this? Williams asked as Sarah expertly tended to Marcus. I've been paying attention, Sarah said simply. Someone had to. As Marcus recovered, he kept staring at Sarah with new eyes. I was wrong about you, he said quietly. We all were. But their troubles were far from over. That night, enemy forces, instructors playing opposition troops, surrounded their camp. It was supposed to be a simple capture exercise. Team Alpha was outnumbered and outgunned. The normal plan would be to surrender and accept capture as part of their training. But Sarah had a different idea. Give me the radio, she said to Williams. Sarah, no, he protested. You'll get us all in trouble. We're supposed to be captured now. Trust me, Sarah said, and something in her voice made him hand over the equipment. For 8 days, Sarah had been listening to radio traffic while everyone ignored her. She knew where every other team was located. She knew the movement patterns of the instructor forces. She knew their call signs, their procedures, and their weaknesses. While her teammates created a distraction, Sarah slipped out of camp and made her way to high ground. From there, she began coordinating the most complex military operation the Academy had ever seen from a cadet. Team Bravo, this is IronWolf, she said into the radio, using a call sign she made up on the spot. Enemy forces are concentrated at your 2 o'clock. If you can flank them from the north while Team Charlie hits from the south, we can turn this around. Who is IronWolf? Came the confused reply. That's not important, Sarah said. What's important is that we stop letting them pick us off one team at a time. It's time to fight back. For the next 4 hours, Sarah orchestrated a battle involving 12 teams and 40 instructors. She turned a simple training exercise into a sophisticated military campaign. She coordinated flanking maneuvers, supply runs, and tactical withdrawals. She used terrain features and weather conditions to maximum advantage. Most importantly, she gave every team a role to play and every cadet a chance to excel. When the sun rose, the cadets had captured most of the instructor force. The exercise had to be called off because the students had completely outmaneuvered their teachers. Sarah's radio transmissions were recorded and played back during the debriefing. Even the toughest instructors were stunned by what they heard. Outstanding tactical thinking, Major Williams said, looking around the room. Whoever IronWolf is, they just taught us all a lesson in leadership. The cadets from Team Alpha looked at each other nervously. They all knew who IronWolf was, but after 20 months of treating Sarah as invisible, it felt strange to speak up for her now. Finally, Marcus stood up. His voice was clear and strong. Sir, IronWolf is Sarah Martinez. She saved my life yesterday and then she saved all of us. Major Williams looked surprised. Martinez? The quiet one? She's not quiet, sir, Marcus said. We just never listened. But even praise felt empty to Sarah now. She was tired of having to prove herself over and over. Tired of being underestimated. Tired of fighting for acceptance that might never come. That night, she sat alone by the lake where the academy held its graduation ceremonies. She was writing a letter to her family, telling them she had decided to quit. The Marines didn't want her, and she was exhausted from trying to convince them otherwise. She was about to seal the letter when she heard footsteps behind her. Cadet Martinez. Sarah turned to see Lieutenant Colonel Hayes, the academy's commanding officer. She quickly stood and saluted, but he waved her back down. At ease, Cadet. Mind if I join you? Sarah shook her head, confused. The commanding officer never talked to individual cadets, especially not her. Hayes sat down on the log beside her and was quiet for a long moment, looking out over the water. You know, he finally said, I've been watching you for 20 months. Every test score, every evaluation, every report from your instructors. Want to know what I see? Sarah didn't trust herself to speak, so she just nodded. I see someone who works twice as hard as everyone else and gets half the credit. I see someone who never complains, never makes excuses, never gives up. I see someone who saves lives and leads tactical operations that impress rooms full of Marine officers. He turned to look at her directly. I also see someone who's been treated unfairly by people who should know better. Tears started to form in Sarah's eyes, but she tried to blink them back. Sir, Let me finish, Hayes said gently. Tomorrow is graduation. Your class will become Marines. But first, there's something you need to know. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a thick file. These are your real scores, Martinez. Not the adjusted ones. Not the go easy on her ones. Your actual performance ratings. Sarah opened the file with trembling hands. Inside were test results, fitness evaluations, leadership assessments, and tactical analyses. Every single score was in the top 5% of her class. Many were the highest in the entire academy. You're not just good enough to be a Marine, Martinez. You're good enough to be one of the best Marines this academy has ever produced. Sarah stared at the papers, hardly believing what she was seeing. But they always treated me like I was the weakest cadet. Hayes sighed deeply. Because they were afraid. Afraid of change, afraid of being wrong, afraid of admitting that their assumptions might not be correct. But fear makes cowards, Martinez. And cowards don't belong in the Marines. He stood up and straightened his uniform. Get some sleep, Cadet. Tomorrow's going to be a very important day. The next morning was graduation day. 300 cadets stood in perfect formation in their dress blue uniforms. Family members filled the bleachers. Local media cameras captured every moment of the ceremony. Sarah stood in the back row where she always stood. Invisible, forgotten, just another face in the crowd. Major Williams began reading the names of the top graduates. The ones who would receive special recognition and choice assignments. Sarah listened to the familiar names of cadets who had been given every advantage while she had been held back. Then something unexpected happened. Before we continue with our recognition ceremony, Major Williams announced, Lieutenant Colonel Hayes has a special presentation. Hayes stepped forward and took the microphone. His voice carried clearly across the parade ground. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, proud families, in my 30 years of military service, I have rarely encountered a Marine who embodies our core values as completely as the one I'm about to recognize. Sarah felt her heart begin to race. Surely he wasn't talking about her. This Marine scored in the top 1% in tactical operations, physical fitness, marksmanship and leadership assessment. This Marine saved a fellow cadet's life under extreme conditions and then led a complex military operation that impressed every instructor at this academy. The crowd was completely silent now. Even the other cadets had stopped fidgeting and were listening intently. But more importantly, this Marine accomplished all of this while being consistently underestimated and overlooked. While being told they weren't strong enough, tough enough, or good enough. While being treated as less than equal by people who should have recognized their potential from day one. Hayes paused and looked directly across the formation to where Sarah stood. This Marine never complained about unfair treatment. Never made excuses for others' prejudice. Never gave up even when it would have been easier to walk away. This Marine exemplified the warrior spirit that makes our Corps the finest fighting force in the world. Sarah felt like the world was spinning around her. This couldn't be happening. However, Hayes continued, his voice growing stronger, this Marine was never given the recognition they deserved during training. They were held back by instructors who let bias cloud their judgment. They were underestimated by fellow cadets who saw only what they expected to see instead of what was actually in front of them. The silence was so complete you could hear the wind in the trees. Today that changes. Today this Marine receives the recognition they earned 20 months ago. Hayes looked across the formation until his eyes found Sarah's. IronWolf, stand by. Sarah's knees nearly gave out. IronWolf, the call sign she had used during the field exercise. The name that had become legend among her classmates. But she was in the back row, hidden behind 300 other cadets. IronWolf, Hayes repeated, his voice carrying across the entire academy. Step forward and be recognized. Sarah took a deep breath and began walking. As she moved through the formation, something amazing happened. The other cadets didn't just step aside to let her pass. They came to attention and saluted her. It started with Marcus, who snapped to attention the moment he saw her moving. Then Williams. Then Davis and Peters and Johnson. One by one, every cadet in the formation turned to salute her as she passed. As Sarah walked toward the front of the formation, she could hear whispers from the crowd in the bleachers. That's her? She looks so young. I can't believe they almost overlooked her. She's the one who saved that boy's life? She planned that whole battle? Sarah reached the front of the formation and stood at attention before Lieutenant Colonel Hayes. Her heart was pounding so hard she was sure everyone could hear it. Hayes stepped forward with something in his hands, a medal Sarah had never seen before. Ladies and gentlemen, Hayes announced as he pinned the medal to Sarah's uniform, I present to you the recipient of the Academy's highest honor, the Medal of Excellence for Outstanding Leadership, 2nd Lieutenant Sarah Martinez. The crowd erupted. Sarah's family was on their feet in the bleachers, screaming and crying. Her brother, home from his own deployment overseas, was saluting her from the stands with tears streaming down his face. But the most incredible thing was happening behind her. All 300 cadets in her graduating class were now standing at attention, saluting her. Then the instructors joined them. Even Sergeant Johnson, who had spent 20 months treating her like she was fragile, was standing at attention with obvious pride and regret on his face. Hayes leaned close to Sarah's ear and spoke quietly so only she could hear. You earned this, Marine. Every single day for 20 months you earned this. I'm sorry it took us so long to see it. Sarah tried to speak but no words would come. 20 months of held-back tears were finally flowing freely down her cheeks. Hayes stepped back and gave her one final salute. Semper Fi, IronWolf. Semper Fi, sir, Sarah managed to whisper. Later, after the ceremony, after the photographs, after what felt like hours of congratulations from people who had ignored her for almost 2 years, Sarah found herself back by the lake where this had all started. Marcus approached her, still in his dress uniform. Sarah, he said, and his voice was completely different now, respectful, humble. I owe you more than an apology. We all do. Sarah turned to face him. Marcus, you don't need to. Yes, I do, he interrupted. I almost died because I was too proud and stupid to follow basic safety procedures. You risked your life to save me even though I had spent 20 months treating you like you didn't belong here. That makes me not just wrong but the worst kind of person. He extended his hand to her. It would be the greatest honor of my military career to serve alongside you, Lieutenant Martinez. Sarah shook his hand and smiled through her tears. Just call me Iron Wolf. Over the next hour, more cadets approached. Each one offered their own apology and their respect. Each one acknowledged what Sarah had always known but they had refused to see, that she belonged here just as much as any of them. Tom Williams, who had carried the radio during the field exercise, approached nervously. Sarah, I want you to know, when you asked for the radio that night I almost said no because I thought you'd mess everything up. I was so wrong. You saved all of us and you made us all better Marines. Jennifer Peters, one of only 3 other women in their class, came up with tears in her eyes. You did it, she said simply. You proved we belong here. Thank you. Even some of the instructors approached to offer their apologies and congratulations. Sergeant Johnson looked the most uncomfortable of all. Martinez, he said, struggling with the words, I failed you. I let my assumptions about what you could handle keep you from becoming the Marine you were meant to be. That's on me, not on you. Sergeant, Sarah said gently, we're all learning. The important thing is that we do better going forward. As the sun began to set over the academy, Sarah looked at her medal one more time. It felt heavy in her hands, not just because of the medal but because of everything it represented. Recognition, respect, dreams finally realized. Her phone buzzed with a text message from her little sister back home. Saw the ceremony on the news. You're famous. Everyone at school is talking about how you're a real-life superhero. Sarah smiled and typed back, not a superhero, just a Marine. But as she sat there by the lake, Sarah realized something important had changed inside her. For 20 months she had been fighting to prove she belonged. Now she knew she didn't have to prove anything to anyone ever again. She was exactly who she was meant to be. Lieutenant Colonel Hayes appeared beside her one more time, carrying a folder. Your first assignment came through, he said, handing her the papers. Thought you might want to see it right away. Sarah opened the folder and read the orders. She was being assigned to the 1st Marine Special Operations Battalion, one of the most elite units in the entire military. Only the very best Marines ever received such assignments. Sir, she said, looking up at Hayes in amazement, this is Special Operations. They only take the best of the best, Hayes finished. Which is exactly what you are, Iron Wolf. He started to walk away, then turned back one more time. Oh, and Martinez? Your call sign is now official. Iron Wolf isn't just what we called you during that exercise. It's your permanent military designation. You've earned the right to carry that name for the rest of your career. Sarah felt a new wave of emotion washing over her, but this time it was pure joy. Thank you, sir, she said. For everything. Hayes nodded and walked away, leaving Sarah alone under the emerging stars. As she sat there, Sarah thought about all the young women who might follow in her footsteps someday. The ones who would face the same doubts, the same obstacles, the same people telling them they weren't good enough or strong enough or tough enough. She hoped her story would reach them. She hoped they would know that being underestimated wasn't a weakness. It was actually an advantage. It meant you got to surprise people. It meant your victories meant more because you had to work harder for them. Most importantly, she hoped they would remember that sometimes you have to be invisible for a while before you can become legendary. The next morning, as Sarah packed her belongings to leave for her new assignment, she found the letter she had written by the lake, the one where she had decided to quit. She read it one more time, remembering the pain and frustration and doubt she had felt when she wrote those words. Then she tore the letter into small pieces and threw them away. Some dreams were worth fighting for, even when the whole world seemed to be against you. Some dreams were worth 20 months of being invisible, if it meant that one day you could stand in the light and show everyone what you were really made of. As Lieutenant Sarah Iron Wolf Martinez drove away from the Marine Corps Academy that morning, she thought about the road ahead. There would be new challenges, new obstacles, new people who might underestimate her because of how she looked or how old she was or simply because she was different from what they expected. But Sarah wasn't worried anymore. She had learned the most important lesson of all. You don't need anyone else's permission to be who you are. You just need to be ready when someone finally stands up and recognizes what was always there. She had spent 20 months proving she belonged. Now she was ready to show the world what a Marine could really do. The road stretched out ahead of her, leading toward new adventures and new opportunities to serve. Sarah Martinez, Iron Wolf, was finally exactly where she belonged. And she was just getting started.